Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. All right, and today's guest is Brett Trembly. Hi, Brett.
Hi, how are you, Adi?
Good. So good to have you on this podcast. I am super excited because we're going to talk all about delegation today. You are the delegation expert. It actually even says it on your LinkedIn profile. So if people look up, you are the delegation expert, but you're an accomplished entrepreneur, you're a lawyer, and you basically scaled up your law firm where now you get to work 20% of your time on the law firm, right?
Yep.
And then you had the opportunity to be the co-founder of Get Stuffed Up, which you can see also behind you in the background. And that is a staffing agency where you help entrepreneurs get the help that they need in terms of the executive assistants, VAs, etc., so they can actually delegate. So you are not just going to talk about delegation theoretically, but we're actually going to give examples on how you actually apply that in order to found a second business and be successful in both. And you're also an accomplished author. You wrote The Danger Zone. And
accomplished is pushing it a bit, but yeah, I have a book.
You have a book. Well, that's good. That's a lot. That's a start. But in that book, you are basically addressing what are the 5 danger zones where business owners can get sued, because you are the defender of the employers.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's a great book. Our listeners should go into Amazon, right? They can get it on Amazon and read it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to talk about the danger zones today. We're going to talk about, well, I guess if you don't delegate, it can be dangerous to your business. We're going to talk about delegation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Brett, let's start about what's the hardest thing that you see business owners do what's the hardest thing for business owners in terms of delegating? Why are they not, they want to delegate, but why are they not delegating?
Okay, there's 2 camps here. There's people that are so busy, or at least they are in, if this is offensive, it is what it is, but it's what Napoleon Hill calls drifting. Just drifting through life, working so hard that, and again, hard work's good, right? Hard work's going to definitely move you forward unless you're on the hamster wheel, and then you're just running faster and faster, but you're actually not going anywhere. And I don't want the hamster wheel example to sound cliche because it's just so relevant and true. But they're the people that don't even take the time to think, like, what am I doing and how am I spending my time and why? Because I could get rid of these 10 things on this plate and the 5 things on this plate and the 20 things, because we're all juggling all these plates and I could be twice as effective in half the time. And that's not hyperbole. It is actually true. So that's one camp of people who just don't take the time to think. It's called Think and Grow Rich, right? Not Work and Grow Rich. So you have to think about what's coming, and I know that you help people with this, but every quarter planning and like what's going right in the business, what's going wrong, how do we get better? And every quarter, what can I delegate? What can I get rid of? So then there's the other camp of people that have some thoughts about what I can get rid of, but you know what they do is they think, nah, I don't have time to train someone. I'm too busy to train someone, or no, I can't find anybody that's going to be as good at me at that. So I can't give that up. And that's a whole nother set of problems to get over. But that's usually where the two, you usually fall with one of those 2 camps.
Right. And I think there is also the combination where you are so busy, you are drifting, you are just like going on the hamster wheel and you go. And one of the reasons you probably don't want to get off because you feel like you are the best at doing it, or I don't have the time to teach somebody because I can do the same thing in 2 minutes. What I can teach will take me 10 minutes to teach somebody else. And it's just not, it's a no-win situation, basically.
Yeah. Well, it is a big win situation because let's say you take the 10 minutes to train someone, right? So eventually you're just going to get back that time exponentially
Oh, I
because
agree. That's a win for sure.
yeah,
I'm talking about
yeah,
if you're staying on this hamster wheel and thinking,
yep,
well, I can't delegate, I can't teach anybody, I'm doing it better than anybody else. All of that, it's kind of like you are not winning really because you're just creating more. I mean, exactly what you said.
yeah. I mean, look, so I'm a lawyer. I have a law firm. It's so very rare for lawyers to admit to themselves or to think like, I bet you there's people that are better than me. Like every lawyer can't be the best, right? Statistically speaking, half the lawyers that we all know are in the bottom half of the lawyers that we all know, right? Like it's funny to think about it that way. So yeah, but it's the same thing for any business owner, right? Like you may not be the best at baking pies, actually. You may not be the best at I don't know, selling products. So if you're the business owner, it's okay to hold on to the things you are really good at, but you got to delegate the things that you're not, and you have to just be honest with yourself. Maybe some people want to do legal work, for example, and they want to delegate growing the firm and the marketing and the sales. Maybe somebody wants to continue to be the baker, but they need to bring in someone else to help grow, like delegate all the other stuff that they're doing. But for the most part, business owners are the ones that have the vision of where they want the company to go, and they need to delegate 90% of the other things if they ever want to get to where we all have these visions in our head of what we want our business to look like.
For sure. So now let's talk about the process of delegation. So let's say if right now we have business owners that are listening to us and I go, that's great. Okay, you convinced me. I don't want to be in either one of those camps. I want to be in the camp of the person that actually delegates and want to have the win, right?
Yeah.
So what's the first step?
So one of the I guess exercises that we have our clients do, we tell our clients is make a list of all the things. Spend 3 days and just write down everything you do. Compile it on a big list, right? And then take a highlighter and highlight everything in yellow that you love doing and that energizes you, and highlight everything in pink that you hate doing. The list of pink items will be enormous, or it should be. That's what you start with. You just take the 50, 100 or 10 or whatever it is things that you don't like doing and start putting them into groups and decide, what can one person handle these 10? Can another person handle these 15? So then you almost start to create a little job description, right? Because you're gonna have some personal things and a lot of work things. So then you make a hiring plan. You say, well, this is the first person I can hire because it's the fastest and it will free up the most of my time. Or, like I can hire these two people, or I know someone, or I have capacity on my team to delegate these extra things to. And it's just a really powerful exercise.
Yeah, it sounds great. It sounds exactly like you're doing the time study and you see, and it's very revealing of where you actually spend, what are you spending your time on, right? And what are your thoughts on putting like some kind of a dollar value next to it in terms of seeing how much money you actually?
Okay. So that's like the next level. And I'm glad you brought that up, because you can either put the time it takes you and delegate the things first that take you the most time, or you could put the dollar amount, but time is money. So it should be the same thing, because if you have a low dollar cost, but you're doing it for 8 hours a day, well, that clearly should be the first thing you get rid of, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's not only the things I guess it's the things you don't like doing that are not the highest and best use of your time. And then on that list, you triage the things that are costing you the most money or that are the lowest paid positions.
Right. And it's also, it's kind of like, it's not necessarily the amount of money that you're getting paid as the business owner, right? So it's not, you don't have to calculate your hourly rate, but it's also the amount of opportunities that you are missing, because if you're there filing as opposed to talking to your next big client, so that's a loss of tens of thousands, if it can be hundreds of thousands or millions, right? Depends on how much you charge and who that client is. So it's also the lost opportunity of spending your time doing those tasks you can easily delegate. Let's say you're paying somebody $20 an hour to do that, but you have the potential to make so much more. So that's another way that, I mean, I personally like to look at it that way as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the ultimate point we're trying to get to, right? Because when you're answering your own phones, you're not doing high-end marketing or networking that could bring your next $10,000 client in. So not only are you doing a task that's going to reward you very little amount of money, but you're also missing out. Like the opportunity cost is just enormous.
For sure. Absolutely. Okay. So we talked about the step of making that list and highlighting in yellow or pink, the two, whatever colors, right? They can choose whatever
Right.
colors they
Yeah,
want. If they want red and green, that's totally fine too.
right.
And so we do that. Then what's the next step in terms of delegation?
Okay. So like it's just what we were saying. It's triaging that list and then taking the list of these are the 30 things I really hate doing. Who can I give them to that's on my team and not overwhelm them, by the way? So who's equipped to handle this, or who can I hire to help attack these items? So let's say there's a like email is something that we help people delegate, because email as professionals kind of rules our lives. So you could hire one assistant to do your calendar and your email, to manage your email for you, to answer for you, to only notify you when something important comes in. And then with the 5 or 10 hours a week that's going to save you, do something of high value, and you just basically made 3 times more than you'd be paying like for a virtual assistant, for example. So you want to get rid of the time sucks, the things that are getting in the way of your time to think and time to spend on high level items. And then you got to think through, well, who can take those items? Is it somebody in-house? Do I need to make a domestic hire, or can I do this job virtually? Because you are creating it. And by the way, like the second and third step is, what are all of the things that my business should be doing that's not doing? I'm not sending out monthly or weekly newsletters. I'm not trying to get speaking gigs. I'm not posting on social media enough. I don't have a client concierge. I don't have a billing coordinator. I don't have a receptionist. Those are then other things that either aren't getting done, so they fall on you, that you need to delegate. But delegate doesn't just mean to a personal assistant. It means organizing all the tasks within that a business needs done, and using that to help create your organizational or accountability chart.
Yeah, for sure. So it's basically taking those actions that, I like the idea of taking the actions that you are not doing on your wish list, right? That you wish you could be doing, or that you should be doing in order to expand the business, but you don't have enough, you don't have the capacity to do it yourself, and you shouldn't do it yourself. So then use those to add it to the list and the job description, because now you have the opportunity of somebody doing it, and make sure that it's getting done.
Yeah.
So, one of the questions that I hear a lot is like, okay, so now I decided I'm going to delegate. Okay, you convinced me. Decided I'm going to delegate. I'm going to make my list. I'm going to create a job description. I'm going to use, let's say I use the services. Okay, so I get a virtual assistant. How is the virtual assistant going to know how to manage my emails?
Well, that's where training comes in. And training is the component we talked about, where why train someone for 10 minutes if I could do it in 2 minutes? You eventually you can have people that you hire and train to be the people who train new people, right? Like you have an HR team, or they don't even have to be a fancy title, just new client trainer, takes them through the core values of the firm. It's just onboarding, right? And then like my old personal assistants, when they get promoted, they train my new personal assistants, so I don't have to spend a lot of time retraining and retraining. So as you grow and you get more resources, that's possible. But in the beginning, somebody has to train. So it's going to have to be your time. But it doesn't have to be like, oh, I got to take a whole week and just train this new person, right? Day one, you give them a list of 7 tasks, spend an hour, show them how to do some of those tasks, and leave them alone. Let them figure some things out. The next morning, well, what did you do? How did you do it? Let me give you feedback. You give them feedback and they get better. Day 3, okay, let me give you some more feedback and see how you're doing on those tasks. All right, good. Now we're going to give you a few more tasks. It can be 30 minutes per day, the more you train them, then the faster they're going to ramp up, of course. But it doesn't have to be so daunting where you think this person is going to be bugging me all day long and I don't have the time. You can create the time by putting in your calendar 30 minutes, at lunch for a week, or, in the morning, etc. And of course, hopefully there's other people around you that part of your business that can also help take some of the training load.
Absolutely. And that's really what I agree with you 100%. And that's where, the process documentation really that I'm so passionate about comes into play, because if you had well-documented processes and procedures, your assistant can actually follow them. I mean, that's what happened to me. I'm onboarding a new assistant and I already had those created. So it's much easier to onboard. Now, how do you create it? Because that's another question, right? So what I did is the first time I hired an executive assistant, I actually created videos of how I do things, right? So let's say I'm onboarding a new client. So I created a video on how to onboard a new client. I created a video on how to calendar, like my calendar system, etc. And then I had the assistant actually go over the videos and actually write a step-by-step procedure. So then when that person got promoted and I have my new assistant, just like to your point, then they can train, but they can also get, you also have it documented. So then you can use that documentation. So I'm really big on videoing it, because I know that as an entrepreneur, you don't have time to sit down and write the procedures. And you sometimes don't know really what your process is. But if you actually show somebody how you, again, onboard a new client, that's your process right there. And you have a video, they can watch it, they can help you.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I should have mentioned that. So while you're training the 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour per day, you should be recording those training sessions. You just using screen capture, and then the person that you're training doesn't go back and ask you questions. They go back and watch the video, and then they watch the video again, they watch the video again. If they still have questions, then it's a good indication of, can this person learn? Because I think the video answered, or you know what, I didn't say enough in the video. Like me, I'm a chronic under communicator. I want people to understand what's in my head. I know that about myself. It's like exhausting for me to over explain things. Some people will take hours and hours and try to simplify things that are already simple enough. We're all different that way. But the recording videos starts creating your database of training videos. So it's also good for the next person. And then the person you hire should make their own videos. So yeah, really, really good point.
Absolutely. And, and then taking those videos and again, putting it in writing, because you can ask the assistant, okay, you watch the video, then write the steps that you understand from the video. So that way, to your point, if you're under communicating, you can see that it's not there, right? So maybe you can add just those points as opposed to repeat yourself all over. So let's say they understand how to do 1, 2, 3, and 4, but then in the video you went over 6, we missed 5. How do I do 5? Okay, good. That is the point you're missing. Let me show you another video or write it, etc. So great idea. In terms of email management, that's a big one, right? Because it's my voice, it's my communication. What advice do you have in terms of delegating email management?
So your assistant, should say, like, oh, hey, Brett, thanks so much for the email. We're going to get back to you. Like I'll let I'll let, I'm just thinking, I'll let John know that you emailed, and I think he should be able to get back to you within a few days, right? And then you're just letting people know that, and I neglected to do this recently, and it was a bad result. But it's not perfect. That was my fault, not my assistant's fault. But anyway, you're letting people know that you got the email and that you will respond. Most people nowadays actually don't expect same day answers. It's not reasonable to expect same day answers. It's really not nice to expect same day answers. Like those unless it's an emergency, and that happens, but those vendors or those clients are not your best clients if they're like, I need you right now. I need you to respond right now. So as your assistant gets better and better, they can eventually, start to answer like, oh, hey, I took care of this, or hey, please talk to this person. They can be you, right? Like a lot of people have social media managers. Those people, the social media managers are pretending to be that person, and nobody cries foul over it. So yeah, there's again, it takes some time and it takes some training, but after a while, you're going to hit your stride and it's going to feel really good.
Absolutely. And, to your point, yes, sometimes, not sometimes, but many, many occasions, you can respond the same in an hour. But because it's instant, because you send an email, sometimes you have that, or you go, okay, well, it's fine. I don't expect it, but you still have that expectation. You know what I mean? So if somebody, and what it is, it's basically that void is nobody is getting back to you. Let's say I send an email to you and then 3 days later you respond. But if I would have gotten a response from your assistant saying, Brad got your email. Thank you, Adi, for your email. And he will respond within whatever your policy is in responding. Go, okay, he got my email. He will respond. I can now not think about it anymore. I know he got it, right? So he didn't just fall into this, void of cyberspace that I don't know if it got accepted or not. So I think it's an excellent point. One thing that I learned, and let me know what you think, I read it somewhere and then I started applying it in terms of teaching the executive assistant on how to be your voice and how to manage your emails is also record, like when you're doing emails, record it and explain out loud. Okay, so this is what we got here in this email, and this is how I'm going to answer, right? So you basically, if you do that enough for about a couple of weeks and your assistant is watching you and watching those videos and understands it, they become accustomed to how you respond. They become accustomed to what to do because there are commonalities. I know a lot of people say, well, every email is different. Well, it's not really, because there are things you can respond. They can see how you like to make your appointments. They can see that, I can respond with a Calendly link if somebody is trying to reschedule or want to make an appointment. And I think the more you do that, they will get more of an understanding on how to manage emails. And not only that, what I tell my assistant and I tell others that I train on that is tell yourself the story. Read the email from bottom to top, right? I mean, let's say they come in the middle of the conversation. Really understand the story, like who is saying what to whom, right? And once you get that, it's easier to respond, and craft a response. And you can craft it as a draft in the beginning, like the assistant can make a draft, and then I can look at it and then I can change, but at least that aspect of it got started. I don't have to start from scratch. What do you think about that?
Yeah, again, you're giving someone a little more responsibility, testing them, and then giving feedback, and that's that's a really great way that you just put it. Let me back up for 1 second though. A lot of what we do on email is we first of all, we let it interrupt our day, which is a horrible use of time. Second of all, we look at so many things that we don't need to. And so the system, we call it Teaming the Email Monster, that we teach people. And we can send you the link if you want to send the listeners, for example, is create 4 folders. Put all like the events and all the stuff that you don't need right away. Get rid of all the spam. Have another folder that's like need to answer right now. So I'm gonna talk to Brett today about this, and the ones that can wait to the end of the week. So remember, before email happened, mail came in, someone opened the mail, someone sorted the mail, and someone put it in different piles. The only things that were put on your or the CEO's desk were the really important things that the assistant thought needed to be answered right away. It's the same concept. Just because it's on your phone or on your computer, you don't need to be a slave to it. So once your eyeballs are not cluttered with all the other emails and you're just looking at the ones that are important, it's easy to handle email in a few minutes per day thanks to your assistant, because then she or he can read you the email and you say this, say that, like you can just dictate the responses.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, I'm big at tagging and labeling and putting it in folders and I like your analogies because I always try to look at an analogy that is in the real world, right? It's kind of like, okay, you have all these file folders on the computer, but let's say you didn't have a computer. What would it be in the real world if you actually had a file cabinet, right? Would you create a folder for each and every piece of paper? No. So there will be more of a method to it. So let's apply that to filing on the computer, right? Or sorting. I mean, I think when you actually look at examples that are concrete, that are real, then you can translate it into the system, IT system that you are using, and that makes it easier.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you think about how should be the communication between the CEO or the entrepreneur and the assistant? Like how often, what methods? I mean, any advice that you have on that?
Daily check-ins, because if you're a fast-paced CEO, entrepreneur, you need someone, right? And then of course you need a communication channel like Slack or Click if you're using Zoho or something like that, that you're constantly able to say, do this, do this, do this. That's one of the best things about having an assistant with the capacity to just get things done for you right when you need them, is you stop yourself from doing the things yourself. You're just like, nope, send it to my assistant. Boom, boom, look this up, book this, talk to this person, set up this meeting. So you need them constantly at your beck and call. You want to have check-ins every day to go through important things and important emails. And you want to have at least once per week a full meeting where you're giving the feedback, you're talking about big projects, you're assigning tasks, you're reviewing the previous week's tasks so that you can make sure that nothing was missed. That's super important.
Absolutely. So from an entrepreneur that made it in terms of transitioning from working full-time at the law firm with probably not a lot of lawyers, right? You were probably the only one at that time, if I remember the story correctly. Maybe you had another person.
No, I started and I was truly all by myself.
All by yourself, to actually having a firm that right now has more than 10 lawyers, right?
Yeah.
And is functioning with you only being there 20% of the time. So you made it. I mean, you're walking the walk, right? So we have entrepreneurs that are listening to us right now, and they're just like, oh, I wish I can do that.
Yeah.
What are your top, we talked about the specifics, how to delegate, etc. But what would you say if you had, just in a few sentences, just tell them the advice, this is what you need to do, or this is the viewpoint or the mindset that you need to have?
Okay, so the mindset is I am not my business, right? Your business is something that you are running, and if you're the only person and you have a very small business, what happens is the business owns you instead of you owning the business. Because if you can't leave and your business runs without you, then you don't have a real business. And I don't mean that to put people down, like, oh, you don't have a real, that's not what I'm saying. Because I remember how stressed I was taking vacations early on because my business like didn't function. There was no one to do things. So I was either trying to work on vacation or just stressed that I was missing things. And yeah, it's just tough. So you have to shift at some point from thinking my business is me and how hard I work to I need to find the best people to run my business. Like I'm not a chef. And if I opened a restaurant and was my own chef, it would very quickly go to business because people would be like, this food is terrible, right? So if I opened a restaurant, which I could, if that was something I wanted to do, I would go and find the best chef possible. I would go find the nicest, most friendliest host or hostess possible. I would find a really good marketing person. I would find the waiters and I would train the living out of them. And we would come up with an angle to make our restaurant different and stand out. But I wouldn't do any of those tasks myself. And as a business owner, you sometimes if you open a pizza shop and it's you and your spouse and the business is going to own you forever that way, but it's okay to start that way. Eventually you have to get it to the point where it can run very successfully without you, and that's just a mindset shift of instead of focusing on the marketing and the sales and doing the work, it's the people who are going to do the work to make the business great.
Absolutely. And and one of the things that I hear from entrepreneurs is basic, and I think you and I also talked about it when we met before the podcast. It is also, people can listen to you and say, yes, yes, Brad, this is easy for you to say because, you are successful. So if you wanted to open a restaurant, you probably have money and you can hire the best people. But I'm just starting my business. I don't have capital. And so if I actually hire people, I am going to cut across my profit. And
Yeah.
that is dangerous. So I don't want to, so what would you say to that?
Okay. Well, that's a very good question, because I spent 2.5 years running my own business, right? My own law firm, doing everything myself, because I was like, I can't hire someone. I don't have the money. You will never have money unless you hire someone to help your business make money. Like you can't be all things to all people and do the marketing and do the sales and do the networking and do the product or the service or whatever business you're doing, unless you want to hit a ceiling very early on and just be very miserable. I've still never met a true solo who's just like, I get all the clients right when I need them, and everyone pays right when I need them, and I don't need any help, right? Who's doing your invoicing and your billing and your bookkeeping, and all the things that a business needs to do? When it's easier with lawyers to give this example, right? Because traditionally we have an hourly rate. So if I bill 1 hour per day at $300, then my business is going to have $300 a day in revenue. If I spend 2 hours, I just double that, and my business grew by 100%, because I'm at $600 per day, 2 hours at $300. So when I didn't have the money to hire someone, but somebody, a mentor, finally just like hit me over the head almost and said, you need to hire someone. So I did, and I doubled my business the next month, more than twice. And it was just like, I look back a little bit embarrassed, and just kind of being hard on myself. Like, I was so tied to not having money and not, I don't come from money. I didn't have any money in my bank account. I couldn't get a loan. I only had student loans. I was in debt. So I had to bootstrap. And bootstrapping's good because it forces you to be creative. If someone throws money at you, you tend to spend it, and then it can be gone. So it's not the lack of money, it's the mindset behind, I will only get money if I hire other people to help me get there. One of the things that I love about this business is, because we do offshore staffing for entrepreneurs and business owners, is that it is less expensive than traditional onshore hiring. So you can get a few people and just delegate. Like, if I was doing a podcast, I would show up, do it, and then who's my next person? Who's my next person? Somebody else would be in charge of researching who to book, reaching out to those people to book them afterwards, doing the cut ups, the editing, doing the posting, doing the promotion, all of the things that go into having a good podcast. For example, if that's your goal, so, some people have a podcast to just meet people and to post it, but other people, it's their goal to have, like, that's their main job, right? The more you delegate, the better and faster you will grow that business. If you're trying to do all those things yourself, again, going back to the restaurant example, you're never going to run a restaurant and make a ton of money by yourself and say, now I got 50 grand in the bank account, so now I can hire someone. You'll never get there, because you'll either be out of business or you'll barely make any money, because you're just making your customers so upset with how poorly run restaurant you have.
Absolutely. And that's a great example, because you really cannot run a restaurant all by yourself, especially if you don't know how to cook, or if whatever, it's totally make total sense. And it's a good advice. And it goes back to the beginning of our conversation, where we talked about delegation and making that list and making that time, writing the time next to it, and also the income potential. So you can really make that list and see the hours that you spend on something, what can you do instead, right? Because I think, to your point, is if you delegate, then you have to have a plan. What are you going to do instead? It's not like you're just going to delegate and do nothing, but instead you can do more marketing, you can do more networking, you can go and hire your next salesperson. Whatever it is, you're going to have to funnel your actions towards creating more and not creating less. And I think that is where having a good strategy makes sense, and you just execute on it by actually hiring people.
Except one caveat. Sometimes the doing nothing is not replaced with more marketing, more sales. It's spending more time with your family. It's spending more time working on the business, more time thinking, more time like clearing your head, right? Exercising. So there are a lot of personal things that you need time for, and it's stressful. And then when you don't have time, or you don't make time to to exercise and take care of yourself, then the stress compounds, right?
Yeah, or
So
spend time with your family, then you don't have a family. So
yeah,
absolutely. I agree 100%. Yeah. And and that's a good point, because the help that you are getting, you should also get personal help, right? I mean, you should get somebody that, I for myself, it also applies to your household, so how much time do you actually, let's say you are meal prepping. Okay, so how much time does it take, as opposed to outsourcing it? Yes, you pay money for it, but you are able then to spend more time with your families, exercise, sleep, whatever it is that is valuable, right?
right. I use the example of mowing your own lawn. Um, where I grew up, a lawn maintenance company was almost not heard of, right? Everybody just had a lawnmower, or sometimes even the ones that weren't electric, they just cut the grass and then you had to take the rake. Then again, a lot of I grew up in the desert, so I guess not everybody had grass. But when I moved here and I live in Miami, South Florida, it's like no, almost nobody cuts their own grass. Well, there's a reason. Like, is that what I want to do on a Sunday when I finally have time, or do I want to enjoy my time with my kids? Right. And there are some people who really like getting their hands dirty and fixing stuff. I happen to really enjoy, for some reason, like once per year, taking a full weekend and maybe 2 weekends and cleaning out and reorganizing my garage, because it feels so good to get rid of that clutter. That's something that but I like getting help with it. I like, paying people so I can say, do this, and I do a lot of it myself. But unless you really enjoy it, my dad worked 6 days a week growing up when I was growing up. And then Sundays, he was always busy doing yard work and stuff that I knew he didn't want to do. But, that was a parental thing, which didn't last much longer than that, right? So it's like you have to create time also to be a human and do the things you like to do and spend time with people that you want to spend time with. That's why you're just never going to be happy when you have a business that owns you. It's not possible.
I love it. So it's basically the question to ask: do you own the business, or does the business own you? And that is the question, and something that honestly each and every one of us has to answer. And if the answer is not what you want, then you have to do something about it. And I think today we learn all about the delegation and how to do that. So Brad, that has been super informative. I so appreciate all the information. Before we end off, I'd like to give a shout out to Cesar Quintero, from the Profit Recipe, who introduced us. And I know you work with him, and he helped you to delegate and to grow your business. So definitely he deserves a shout out.
Definitely. Yeah. See, I've been with Caesar a long time, and he's been a big help in everything I've done.
Awesome. So definitely, hello, Caesar, and thank you for the introduction to introduce me to Brett, because now all our listeners totally got all this advice that is priceless. So Brett, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, look, I've had a blast here, Eddie. Thank you so much for having me. What I would like to do for your listeners is offer them a discount on our startup fee if anybody's really interested in delegating the way to freedom. So you can go to getstaffedup.com. I mean, it's spelled just like it sounds, right? Getstaffedup.com. But if you go to /system simplified, then there's actually a page we set up just for your listeners with I think a nice little discount. And that's how we can kind of say thank you to you and your listeners for having me on today.
That is fantastic. So generous. And thank you so much. And yes, definitely go there. So getstaffedup.com /system simplified for the name of this podcast, and see that generous offer. I really appreciate it, Brett. And I will also include it in the notes for this podcast so people can go there. So Awesome. It was great having you here as a guest. I really appreciate all the information, and I'm sure our listeners definitely learned a lot, and hopefully they will apply that so they can be on the road to freedom.
Awesome. I hope they did. And thank you so much for having me today. I absolutely loved it.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.